Thank you for joining us at the Highline Heritage Museum for 7 stories. We have some great storytellers tonight. Your MCs will be Peggy and SYBIL. They will introduce each speaker. And one thing we do every time we have a gathering at the museum is to acknowledge that we are on native land and to think in honor of those who have preceded us, including the people of the Duwamish, Suquamish, Nisqually, and Muckleshoot tribes. If you'd like some more information about the museum, please stop by the front desk on your way out or check us out online. We've got a great website. We have a YouTube channel. We've done lots of interviews on there. And for one of our newer things is a radio station. And I will turn you over to your MCs, Peggy and SYBIL. Thank you.
I wanted to thank you, first of all, for coming. You've got a lot of choices and you're here, and I'm real happy to see you all. We've got some fun stories tonight and surprising ones, so I'm always excited to hear them myself. I don't have any big hints. First of all, I want to give a big shout out to the Highline Heritage Museum, Burien Arts Association, the City of Burien, For Culture, and Paul Currington of Fresh Found Stories, who is our mentor and has given us just incredible help. And it's, neighbors help neighbors, people help people, and he's been indispensable to help 7 Stories kind of get up and running. So, and I want to give a humongous thank you to Scott Schaefer of the B-Town blog. He records and he posts every 7 Stories, and it goes out to our entire area. It's also for the archives at the museum. So I urge you to support the B-Town blog and this Highline Heritage Museum. We have a friend, a very big supporter, a good storyteller, who's in Israel right now. And I bet she's going to try and log on to the B-Town blog. And then you like the B-Town blog on Facebook, and then they send you a link, and then you can watch this live. So hopefully, Deborah, hi, if you get on. I would like to just point out that we have posters of the upcoming 7 Stories events, and Peggy, right here, has all kinds of stuff, all kinds of resources and the upcoming 7 Stories lineup. So stop by and see her before you leave so that you can know of upcoming things. I guess the next thing is to please turn off your phones and sit back and enjoy 7 Stories. Our mission is to really connect people through 7 Stories and share our common humanity. Paul said something that I thought was great, which was the shortest distance between 2 people is a story. So sit back, enjoy your storytellers, and show them a lot of love after they've told their story. Respond and let them know that you're really hearing them. So with that, enjoy this evening. And the first storyteller,
Do you want me to do
maybe let's do it in between, a little bit later.
Okay, have a couple stories.
Yeah. Our first storyteller is AUDRA Polite Kitty, CSAK. Polite Kitty is a sarcastic, witty person telling about their lives as an autistic, disabled super parent, therapist by day, performer by night. So welcome, AUDRA.
I know tonight's theme was duped, and we've all had that moment in our life where we have been, like bamboozled, duped, I guess, somewhat tricked. I can tell you one of the times in my life when this happened was my marriage, right? What a doozy, right? Then I'll go to the other part of the theme, right? Aha, this is why people don't do this. I think one of the times you don't want to be duped is when you're in the hospital. Nobody wants that, it's a tumor. But that's my life. I use laughter as my coping skill because, as you heard, I am disabled. My mom has a lot of problems and she is disabled. My mom had end-stage liver disease. I watched her die, and I talk about this a lot because it was so traumatizing in my life. And I'll give her credit, it was traumatizing for her too. She was the one on the table, not me. As I watched her health decline, it was really hard. Her mental faculties actually left. And I don't know if you know anything about liver disease, even though it might be just the liver and you think, well, it's just not pumping and it's not detoxing your body correctly. Well, when that happens, all these other things in cascade and come down. She really started to just not become the person that I thought she was. Her ammonia levels got so high. She lost her own self, her own awareness in her own surroundings. She would talk gibberish and throw things. She was very angry. And they tell you that when you have liver disease and your ammonia levels go that high, it's like being a really angry drunk. And for the first time in my life, I saw my mom drunk in the hospital. So with all of these things that happened, you know, at one point she actually fell into a coma. It got so bad, she was at the hospital and she went into a coma in the hospital. They couldn't stop it. She was on all these gadgets and, you know, she had like tubing and machines. She was a walking chemistry set. In fact, basically was chemistry because every day we would have to check her blood work and talk to the doctors every day. So the nurse comes down and says, while my mom is in a coma, she can't do anything, she's rigid, she's no movement at all. They decide they want to take an x-ray on her. And I'm thinking, okay, well, how are we going to move all of this? Because again, like I told you, you look in the back of the room, back behind her bed, and it's wall-to-wall machines. She's got tubing coming out of her neck. So I watched this nurse, she's very good at her job. You know, she casually starts picking up all the extra tubing and the machines and she's putting everything in a correct order that makes it really nice and neat. She actually had some of the other nurses bring in extra trays, you know, so you can wheel stuff down when they decided to wheel my mom down. And she was so organized and I can watch it, and because I'm autistic, I love the organization, so I'm just watching her put everything in order. She misses one item. One item. It's the Foley bag. Ooh, someone, ding ding, we have a winner. Someone knows what the Foley bag is. Yeah. Yeah, 2 people. For the others of you who have the pleasure of not knowing what that is, we're all gonna have a little education tonight about it. What is a Foley bag? A Foley bag is the thing that holds your fecal matter. So when you have to go to the bathroom and you are unable to do it yourself, they have a nice bag that catches everything. However, it's not like a catheter. Catheter tubing's usually pretty thinner, and they do have a small bag with it. On a Foley bag, tubing's a little thicker. It's a little more bigger. The bag is also a little bigger to hold the volume of things that come out. So I'm watching this nurse playing Tetris in her head. I can see the wheels. She's looking at everything, you know, and all I hear is the Tetris theme from the Game Boy, you know, playing in my head. So with no hesitation, when she figures out that there's no other room for this Foley bag, she picks up the tubing and tosses it over her shoulder right here, takes the bag and sticks it right in her back pocket. We wheel up my mom and we start walking down. I want you to think about that for a second. It was nice and full, which means it was warm and squishy in her pockets. We were walking down the road, or walking down the hallway, and I could hear the whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And this poor nurse, because this is her everyday life, is trying to make small talk with me. You know, like, how's the weather? How are your kids? While my Darth Mother of a Vader is laying in a bed, and she's got her foley bag in her back pocket like it's her lunch. I can't let this moment pass because I'm staring at her butt in horror. And I tell her, well, I guess it's going okay. And she goes, well, what do you do for a living? And by the way, I don't like that question because I do two things. I'm a therapist and a performer. So the two things that you're either gonna ask me is, how can you help me with da 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 da? Or, where are you performing? I know every performer in here went, yeah, that's a hard one, right? Because my answer is around. It's not a regular 9-to-5 job. I don't have one place I go. I'm all over. A free bird in the wind. So she asked me what I do for a living, and I tell her, well, I'm a therapist, consultant, and I also am a performer. I'm a comedian, an actor. I love comedy. That's kind of where I stay at most of the time. And she looks at me and she's like, oh, it's shock, because now I know what's coming. It's not the therapy. She's in healthcare. We know that. It's the, oh, where do you perform? And I say, around. Follow me, find me. And she, you know, we're kind of talking about performing and how it goes, and, you know, she stares at me and she's just in awe as we're on this elevator wheeling my mom to radiology. And she says, I could never do what you do. That is so amazing and so scary to get up in front of people and tell jokes. Really? Telling jokes is the fun part of that. I get to have people smile and relate to me, and making someone else feel better about their day is so rewarding when you can make them laugh and smile. But again, I couldn't let the moment pass. I said, really? I could never do what you do. I said, that is amazing and so scary. When you can throw a fecal bag over yourself like it's a handbag. She laughed. And that is how I duped a nurse into having a conversation with a comedian. So joke's on you, nursey. By the way, my mom is fine. She's doing much better. She did receive a liver transplant. That should require applause, everybody. That's the good part. She's alive, she's well. She just went and had her checkup. She's now on blood work every 3 months. And if you ever need any kind of organ transplant, I highly suggest you look into being an organ donor yourself, and definitely go to UW because they are truly amazing.
Audra, thank you for that amazing, where are you?
I'm right here.
There. I confess, when you were starting to get into the nitty-gritty of it, I thought, oh boy, I don't know. And then I had this terrible, crazy image of a Halloween costume. A real bizarre Halloween costume of what the nurse was portaging down to the X-ray. Thank you, and I'm very relieved your mom survived that and is doing well. That's good. Nothing like a happy ending. Thank you. Wendy, bird girl, Chamberlain, is an international linguist, bird watcher, and novice storyteller. She is a Californian, but lived in many countries before realizing that the Pacific Northwest is the greatest home of all. So, welcome, Wendy, for the first time to 7 Stories. I'm so happy. Good.
Well, never date a musician is what I told myself many times. You see, my father was a musician, and he opened for John Denver and the Grateful Dead in the 70s, which is pretty cool, right? Yeah. But I mostly raised myself because he forgot to take care of me. So then I went to college, and I met this really cute guy, and he was in a band. He was kind of shy. He totally cracked me up, and I was just smitten. So we were crazy about each other. And he used to cut class to go to gigs, and I was buried in textbooks. But we still found plenty of time to just talk all night. We dated for 4 months, and then it was time for me to go to grad school in Eugene at the U of O. And in the 90s, long-distance relationships meant really expensive phone calls. Do you remember that? And he stayed in Seattle because his band was tasting a little success. So we agreed that we would write letters to each other because I didn't even have a phone. And I was so broke, you guys. I was top ramen broke, like the bargain one. So we decided, I didn't even have a phone, I just had a payphone in the dorm at the U of O. So we were gonna write letters. So I poured my heart into my letters. I wrote all my feelings and thoughts and dreams and cute little stories about hippies in Eugene. And I sent doodles and postcards and poetry. And he sent me nothing. So, frustrated, I grabbed a handful of change, marched down to the payphone and called him, and I said my feelings were hurt because he had not mailed me anything. And he said, Wendy, I did write you. And I said, no, you didn't. And he said, yeah, I did. I think you better wait. Maybe the post office hasn't delivered it yet. And he sounded bored, and I was pissed. So I hesitantly agreed I would wait. So I waited, and I waited. 10 days went by with no mail. Now I scooped up my ramen money, marched to the payphone again, called him and said, hey, no letters from you. And he said, I have been writing you. And I was like, no, you haven't. Why can't you just admit you want to date a bunch of girls and go to music festivals and be like a stupid rock star? And he said, I have been writing you. You are freaking out. And I think you better wait a little longer for the post office to deliver it. And that's when I realized I hated his guts. I hung up on him, told all my friends, never date a musician. Another week went by. I was sitting in my room sulking, and my roommate yelled, Wendy, you got a bunch of letters. And she ran in the room with this handful of letters from him, and then I started crying, and then she started crying, and then we started laughing at each other. And I looked at this stack of letters from the musician and realized I made a horrible mistake. I gave him the wrong address. The zip code was off by 1 digit. And all the letters came to me via Arizona. And I think the post office figured it out. So I was just cracking up and laughing, and I walked out to the courtyard, and I remember just sitting in the summer sun in Eugene, reading every delicious letter. And 34 years later, we're still together. So the aha moment, I guess it's okay to date a musician.
That's a sweet story. I was really getting upset and mad at this guy. Really? Man. Oh, that's great. Good. 34 years.
Yes.
That's now I gotta think about letters. Our next storyteller is a gentleman who has really been supportive of Seven Stories from the get-go. He's hard to describe. An interesting, wonderful storyteller, so welcome to the microphone. Sven.
So this story might be construed as politically motivated or preachy, but that's not my intention at all. These are just things that happened to me, and where I was at the time was how I reacted. So summer 2012, I think June, I had an internship with a company that does like supercomputers, and they like connect you with other companies that are wanting certain work done. And there are like different people who were doing things with biology and chemistry, like modeling things, really cool stuff. I'm just studying computer science, so it's kind of boring to describe. So I'm not going to bother doing that. What I did in my free time while I was in Pittsburgh is I walked around a lot. I like to look at the city. I like to go to graveyards. I love the aesthetic of graveyards. And I like to walk around at night too and like look at the cool buildings with the lights and everything. It's a great pastime of mine. 3 months later, or actually August, so 2 months later, I'm in Chicago for like sort of a presentation as part of this company where they have you do a presentation. I did not put any work into the presentation at all. I was about as prepared for that as I am this. But in my free time, I was walking around. One day I was walking like all day. And Chicago wasn't as interesting as Pittsburgh, very flat. And I like started walking south, and then I was like, oh, it's getting kind of dark. I'm in South Chicago. And I started thinking about crime statistics. And there was someone walking kind of near me. It felt kind of like a zombie movie, a slow-moving zombie, where the person was sort of gesturing towards me. And then I was like, okay. And I started walking. They were following me for a bit, and I picked up the pace. And they didn't pick up their pace. They stayed behind, and I lost them. And it was like nighttime now. It was very dark. And I was like 5 blocks from my hotel. And then somebody pulls up on a bike and stops out in front of me, and like gets off and doing a bunch of like facial tics and like movements of the body, and starts going into this story about having 3 kids and something about being violent and not wanting to do that or something. And where I was in my life at the time, I was sort of like, oh, don't give money to homeless people because they might spend it on drugs. And I wasn't going to try to make a point then because I felt threatened. So I went to an ATM and gave him money, and I was like, okay, I'm done with that. About 5 months from now, 5 months back, there was another situation, and I'm in a very different place in my life, and I view things very differently. I was going to pick up food at a sushi place, and I got out of my car, and then this man came over and shook my hand, introduced himself in sort of broken English, and I don't exactly remember all the things he said. I don't remember his name. It was very hard to follow. At one point he handed me like a gold ring and said something about how it was a gift from me, and he like brought me over to his car to show me that his fuel was down and stuff. And I already decided it's like there's a 1% probability that his story is true about losing his wallet and his wife's in the hospital and all this stuff. And it's like, well, I'm gonna help him out anyway because he's clearly desperate and I have some extra money. Sure, I'll give him some money, but it turns out I only had like a few bucks in my wallet. And I was like, okay, I'll take the time, like the food can wait. I'll go to the ATM. And I was like, actually, I don't know where an ATM is around here. And I walked over to a laundromat and I was trying to like figure out if there's an ATM in there, and then there were some more language barriers, and then I just walked out of there laughing and like, okay, whatever. And I went over to him and I was like, they didn't have an ATM. And he's like, oh, okay, I think I know where one is. Well, I don't exactly remember how he said things, but so I actually got into his car. And then as the car was like pulling back and starting to move away, it's like a more modern car that I'm not used to, the seatbelt like tightened on me. And I was like, am I being kidnapped? Is this gonna be a ransom situation? But then I thought about my privilege and being a man, I'm like, oh, I'm not as afraid. And so we got to an ATM and he parked in such a way that he couldn't see like what I was doing at the ATM or whatever, but he like added an additional thing about how his wife was actually in San Francisco and how far away is that? And it's like, this doesn't seem very likely. And then he handed me like an additional gold thing that just feeling the weight of it, I'm like, this isn't gold. But I was already gonna give him money anyway. I didn't buy any of this, it didn't really matter. And so I went and got him some more money. And I was wearing what I'm wearing right now, so I found it a bit interesting that he thought I had money. Because I wear pretty ratty clothes. This shirt's actually new. Generally I wear clothes until they fall off my body, so anyway. So he brought me back to the sushi place and then he drove off. And I was like kind of shivering just because I wasn't wearing very much and it was pretty cold. Maybe a little bit of the interaction with the person too. I don't know. Like I never felt threatened that whole time. Like I trusted that he wasn't going to kidnap me. It was all fine. I got home, I told my wife about it, and you know, I thought it was kind of funny, interesting, or whatever. And oh yeah, he was going to call me on Monday about getting back the gold jewelry. The ring was a gift, but he wanted the medallion back, and he was going to send me money to pay me back and all this stuff. And it was interesting that I didn't believe him. There was like a 1% chance that this was actually going to happen, but that my brain was like, it seemed like one part of my brain was saying like, oh no, this is going to happen. And then I started feeling like kind of hurt by the fact that he didn't call me on Monday. And it's like, it's very strange that one part of my brain just rationally was like, that's not going to happen. But then like the emotional part being like, this expectation that was kind of flipped of like, oh, 99% this is true. And yeah, it's just an interesting experience having gone through that. Like, oh yeah, and while I was in the car and the seatbelt was tightening on me, it was like, oh, this is a story.
Sven, do you know Gaylord Sison?
Yes.
Have you heard his story?
Oh, did he do something like this?
The exact same guy.
Oh.
The exact same guy. But in a different, he lives on the way to West Seattle. Gold ring, whole thing.
Yeah, maybe the same guy.
Oh, so he's got quite a little gig going on. Yeah, oh man, I was kind of scared. Except that I had heard Gaylord's story about the gold ring and stuff. Wow. Yowzers. Well, he was lucky. He's lucky he picked on the guy with the old clothes. Thank you for that. I'm glad you're safe. Peggy has some things to tell us. So, you're good. Thanks.
Thank you. It's so nice to see everybody here tonight. This is such a great experience. And I'm not, oh, I know, I'm so, I do,
She's a gentle.
I'm the person that they always say, kiss the mic, because I don't speak very loudly. Welcome again, a second time, and it's so great to be here with wonderful stories. And I have always loved literature and poetry, theater. Those are usually sometimes somebody else's words, but stories that we tell from our lives are so meaningful and so enjoyable to participate with you with your story. And that's one of the things that makes 7 Stories special, that it's here in the area. So I have a couple of things. I have a sign-up sheet, and we don't normally ask you to sign in, but if you do tell a story tonight and you haven't previously registered, we would like you to sign in and sign the waiver for being photographed and for your storytelling to be broadcast through our Burien blog. Also, I have we have a table over here, it's actually called the chair, with some information about our program through October. And I would also like to remind people that Fresh Ground Stories, Queen Anne, where we have a relationship with and are mentored by, is a wonderful experience, and they have their storytelling on Thursday evenings, and you can find them on, just Google them. And this coming Thursday, well, not this Thursday, but May 16th, they're going to be talking about coming clean, stories of being honest with yourself. So that sounds like it might be fun. Also, the Sun magazine is looking for stories, and they have a website, thesunmagazine.org. Check them out. They like to, if you want to see your name in print and write your story, that's a place to start. And Under the Rainbow is an LGBTQIA+ arts community based in Edmonds. And if you look them up, they have creative spaces for folks to share stories and connect. So those are other areas and venues that you can visit. Also, our 7 Stories, we are all volunteers. We have minimal funding, and it does cost us extra to have the museum provide this setting for us. And so, as much as I hate to ask for money, I'm not asking for me. I'm asking you to support 7 Stories. And if you would like to do that, we happen to have this wonderful little basket sitting up here on the speaker. Feel free to donate. And also, you can always donate to the museum, which is a wonderful asset for the entire community. That's it. I'm looking forward to the rest of the stories tonight.
Now is a time, if you have a story to tell, we have 2 more storytellers, Emily and then Vicki. But if you feel like a story and you've got something to share, now's your chance. So just let us know if you're up for it. Or after Emily, if you feel like, just raise your hand. If you've got the space, so if you've got the impetus, we'd love to hear your story. Short and sweet is fine. So, Emily, if there's no volunteers right now, you want to come up? Emily Pitts she loves telling stories of all shapes and sizes, from 99 seconds to a 1-hour fringe show in Iceland. When she's not jotting down notes for stories, she's working on a manuscript about trees. She recently started co-producing and hosting a PowerPoint edutainment show in Seattle called My Comedian Teacher, which I really want to see. In her spare time, she teaches middle school. They are lucky kids.
So I don't like Christians. I really don't like them. And when people hear me say that, they get kind of nervous. And they think I'm talking about the religion, but I'm not, because I am a Christian, and I have been since I was very young. I'm talking about the children named Christian who come to my classroom. And every teacher has that one name that they just can't stand. For my teaching partner, it was Tyler's. And for another of my friends, it was Sarah. And every time they ran into one, they're like, oh no, this one's gonna be hard. But for me, it was Christians. And I think it's because I am one. And when I would meet them, I'd be like, oh, that's so kind of your parents to give you the burden of our entire religion on me. But they were not well behaved. And I would do the teaching thing where you like give them the gentle look, like don't do that. And then the kind redirection, like Christian, you should not be doing that right now. And then the firm redirection, you should stop that. And then I would lose my mind after about 10 times, and then I'd just be like, Christian! And it was so annoying to yell the name of my religion across a room every hour or so. Because I've also had a lot of students named Muhammad, and they have all been wonderful. So it was just a little bit extra stingy that the kid named after my religion so was naughty. And so I was like, okay. And teaching middle school is pretty hard, and so I decided I was going to quit my job and travel the world. And my mom said, Emily, people love to quit their job, but they hate to quit their paycheck. And I thought, for me, it will be different. It was not different. I was in Thailand for 3 months training Muay Thai, and as I'm watching my bank account go down and down and down, I call up my mom and I say, yeah, I've quit my paycheck and this is a problem. And she's like, maybe you should get a job. And I was like, what can I do in Thailand? And I remember, I am pretty good at speaking English. So I get online and I start looking around for jobs, and there is an Estonian family that wants an in-person English teacher for their 5-year-old child that is going to international school in Estonia. So he not only speaks Estonian, he speaks Russian, and then at school he's learning English. And they've taken him out of school for a month to go to Thailand on vacation, and they're worried his skills are going to slip a little bit. And so I said, well, I have a master's degree in literacy, and I haven't worked with his age group. I've taught middle school and 5th grade for a long time, but I know, like in theory, I know how it's supposed to happen. And so I tell them, for a 5-year-old, we can't do like sit-down school. It needs to be more play-based. So if you bring some card games and some board games and some books, we'll do a lot of teaching through play and practicing just speaking together. And they were like, how much do you charge? I was like, I really want this job. So I said $20 an hour, which sounds like not a lot when I think about it. But I show up at their villa when they got here, and it was a 7-roomed villa for 3 people. And I thought, I have undercharged. It's a lot. They have a pool in the front, and it's like the most beautiful place I've ever seen. And I was like, okay. And so I meet this small, blonde, blue-eyed 5-year-old, and his dad introduces me to him, and he's like, this is Christian. Now it's spelled with a K, and it has a J in it, but that doesn't mean anything. It sounds the same, and it is the same. And I'm like, okay, Christian, we're gonna have so much fun together. What do you want to do? And he's like, I hate reading. I said, well, that's the one thing I was hired to teach you. So we're gonna have a lot of fun together. And I thought, you know what, there's one of him and there's one of me, and I've always been 30 on 1, but this time, I'll be able to win. I will be able to get him to do what I want. No. He is 5 and I am 35, and he is stubborn and I am stubborn. And we go head to head over reading. And so finally I'm like, you know what, maybe we should play Uno. Turns out he loves Uno. Do you know how often someone with a master's degree can lose Uno? A lot. I'm being paid $20 an hour to play Uno with a 5-year-old. And I'm losing way too much for my own effort. And so I think, you know what, we need to do something different. We need to go to the pool. But I had forgotten my swimsuit, and the pool is right outside his front door. So I was like, I'll just sit out there. I was a lifeguard, it'll be okay. And he has squirt guns, and he thinks it would be great to squirt me. And I think, I cannot let him win. So I jump into the pool fully clothed, because nothing is fun. You can't squirt someone who's already wet. That's not fun anymore. And he was shocked I did that. And I was like, see, I can win too. I found a Connect 4, and I was like, we're gonna play Connect 4, but he couldn't figure out how to win instantly, and he's like, I don't like this game, I'm not gonna play. I was like, oh, darn it. So back we are at Uno. And then he discovered cats, and he discovered a cat cafe. And so then it became my job to take him to the cat cafe and sit there and watch him play with cats. And I was like, we're gonna learn so many vocabulary words about cats. This is so fun for us. And after a month, he really did hate reading, but I really forced the subject, literally and figuratively. And at the end of the month, he leaves to go back home, and I think, wow, no more Christians, no more problems. How much I despise children named Christian. It was a good thing he was cute. And I head back to the US where I get another teaching job. And I think, what is my problem with Christians? Maybe the real problem is with me. Maybe it's because I'm not as kind or as patient as I should be. And then I think, no, someone has to do the devil's work. And I think the devil has chosen Christians.
Nice twist on that one. That's great. Jumping in with all your clothes on in that would have been startling to a kid. Good for you. You know, he's going to remember you.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to be telling stories about you when he's 15 or, Yeah, that's great. Okay, did anybody think about a story that they want to share before we go on to the last storyteller?
I could tell one off the cuff, but I mean,
Tell one
I
off
have
the
to make
cuff.
it up there. Hi, my name's TANIRAE. I like cats, in case you couldn't tell. And I have a story about a little kitten that duped me. My girlfriend and I were in my living room and we heard meow, 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 meow. And I'm like, where's that coming from? She goes, it's out there on the deck. And sure enough, right outside the slider is this little kitten just trotting back and forth across our deck going, meow, 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 meow. And I'm like, what on earth? This never happened. I mean, what's the matter with him? So I opened up the door and I go out there thinking, of course he's gonna run away. And he just ran up to me and rubbed against my legs. Wow, wow. I'm like, oh my gosh, honey, are you hungry? What's wrong? And surely he was hungry. So I ran and I got some food and I fed him. He was just so grateful he quit meowing. And then he went away. And then the next day, wow, 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 there he is back on the deck again. And I'm like, this is a bold little kitten. So I fed him again. And then the girls downstairs found out about him, and so they started feeding him. And he would just come around like 2 or 3 times a day and meow, and then he would just take off again. He was just obviously feral, no collar, no marks on him, and he was very young. And we had just found a abandoned feral cat about 3 weeks prior. And my neighbor said, you have to keep it. And I'm like, no, I'm going to be traveling. Going to Europe, I can't have any more cats. I have one cranky cat who doesn't like anybody, so I am not going to keep this cat. So she kept it, luckily. And I'm like, phew, I dodged a bullet. And then this thing keeps coming around. And so we fed it, and we fed it, and it was getting close to the time where we were going to go to Europe, and I kind of felt responsible for this little creature because he was like a 3-time-a-day visitor. So I thought, I should go see if he's chipped. So I take him to the vet and have him check it out. And nope, there's no chip, there's nothing, he's fine. And, she probably needs to be fixed. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm just gonna take her back and see if Burien cares. A lot of Burien cares. Well, take her. And so I get ready to take her over to Burien Cares, and I stopped by first, and they said, yeah, we could probably take her. If you really have to, give her away, we could probably take her. I'm like, oh, phew. I go home and I tell my friend that had helped me discover her in the first place. And I said, I think Burien will take her. This is great. We're going on vacation next week. We got it made. And here comes little cat. Meow, meow, meow. And my girlfriend hadn't been there for a couple of weeks. And she goes, oh my God, she's so fat. And I said, no, she's not. She goes, yes, she is. I think she's pregnant. Oh, no, she's not pregnant. That's not possible. So I took this little thing and, no, I don't think so. Take her to the vet. She's pregnant. Oh, no. And I've always always wanted to have kittens in my entire life. I mean, I love cats, and I've always had grown-up cats, but I've never had kittens. And I just thought, oh God, but I'm leaving for like a month. I can't have a kitten. I can't. This is so sad. So Burien Cares says, we'll take her, and we'll take care of her and her kittens. Don't worry about it. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I told the girls downstairs. I tell my neighbor, thank goodness, Burien will take her. No, 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 no. I had a full-on mutiny on my hands. The girls downstairs were like, nobody really love her like we do. And then the neighbor's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, who's going to take care of her? I'll come take care of her. I'll come upstairs and take care of her. I'll move upstairs and take care of her. Well, and I literally had 5 people who were going to take care of this cat while we were gone. And sure enough, I had Team Kitten, and I gave them my house, and I went to Europe, and they doted on this cat and took care of her, and she had her 5 kittens a week before we got back, and I had the time of my life. I became the cat video expert of the world. My entire Facebook was filled with kittens, and moms and cats, and all the little adventures, and everything they did, and everything they learned, like their first step and their first meow, and it was probably the most fun I've ever had in my life. And of course I had to keep one of the kittens because they were polydactyls. 6 little toes, he was so cute. And the little mommy had 6 toes, she's so cute. And so I had to keep her because you can't, make a kitten be alone without his mommy, that would be so mean. So I got to keep the little polydactyl black kitten, Mr. Binks, and I kept the little mommy, Farrellina is her name. And I actually found people that would take the other 2 kittens together so that they didn't have to be lonely either. And I just thought, I think I was born for this. I was duped in being a cat mother, and I'm going to do it again. Don't tell those feral cats about it.
Thank you for jumping in and telling that story. It makes me think, I taught in Turkey, and the Turks love cats. They love cats because Muhammad this is the legend, was meditating in his prayers, and a cat came and sat on his robe and fell asleep. And he asked his servant, cut his robe, leave the cat, and get up, and he left. And since then, they love cats. Cats are all over. They're called kedi, and they are all over. I was in Istanbul, and you would love it there. We were watching a play, and a full play, and along the stage walks this cat. They are just everywhere. So,
There's a film, Kenny, about
that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Well, they were lucky. You were duped, but yeah, I don't know. They had an aha moment. They found the right person. Well, our last storyteller for this evening is Vicki. Vicki, I don't know your last name.
GEZON.
Okay, you wrote it down. Yeah, good. Vicki surprised us last time with an amazing story, and I asked her as she walked in if she had something to share. She said, yeah, she could do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm friends with TANIRAE, and I've met the cat mommy, Farrellina. She's really tiny. I mean, she is a kitten. She gave birth to 5 kittens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's really tiny. Anyway, I grew up in Michigan, and I am turning 73. So I was in school before Title IX, and I have a fairly severe form of ADHD, which they never diagnosed that of kids in the 50s and 60s. We just had to cope. And my way of coping was to focus on the H, the hyperactivity. And we couldn't, we were girls. Girls don't do that. Girls don't play team sports. Girls can't be on the track team. I was the fastest kid in 6th grade. The PE teachers, particularly the male PE teachers, just hated that. I could beat any boy in the school.
Can you hear her? Can you hear her back there?
Not very well.
So you have to speak up, because that was a good one.
So
Say that last sentence.
I graduated junior high, and one of the PE teachers said, you just need to go to the track team practices and just practice with them. I did go to one, and of course, all those boys were saying, girls can't be on the track team. And yeah, I just went to one. Anyway, so in high school, I came up with creative ways to entertain myself that were physical. I had 5 sisters, and I would come up with creative games to engage the hyperactivity. One of them was stoning tag. It's exactly as it sounds. We'd usually do boys against the girls, a handful of little gravel, hide out, you see them, wham! Gravel. Sometimes you get a little bloody. And then we would play electric fence, crack the whip. Jump in the lake, get your clothes all soaking wet, and then you have to decide who's the one who's going to put their hand on the electric fence. And we would end up all lying about on the field, writhing and moaning. And we thought that was great fun. So I get into Michigan State, and I can't be on any team. It's Title IX. You can play field hockey in a skirt during PE, but that's about it. And so I hear about, I'm a little bit boy crazy at this point in my life, and I hear about this thing called the Intramural Skydiving Club. And I go, okay. I bet there's lots of boys there. Yeah, it was all guys. And I was a little bit scared about the whole thing, and I made myself do it. And I was high for about 3 weeks afterwards. Everyone who had the misfortune of running into me got to hear about, I jumped out of a perfectly good plane. And then my highness went away. And I was like, oh no, I have to do it again. The plan was do it once, call it good, talk about it, and then be done. So I had to go back. And of course, it's all guys. It was great fun. I got lots of attention. And on cloudy, nasty days, we couldn't go up in the plane. And at that time, I drove a '67 Chevy Impala convertible. And as soon as I'd arrive at the drop zone, which was this farmer's field, 3 or 4 guys would run up to me, can we borrow your car? Can we borrow your car? And they would take my car and be gone. And I'd do my skydiving. Only about a year later did I find out that they were lining up 4 guys across the back seat, driving down the 2-lane Michigan roads and mooning everybody. So one cloudy day, I came up with a brilliant idea. You know, I had a whole lifetime messing with my sisters, and I thought, oh, this is a brilliant idea. We'll call it van tucking. And so we got the farmer, and we put him on a chair, and you're gonna watch this cool thing we can do on a cloudy day. And one guy had this big van, and we lined up sitting on the ground in a row, like about 10 of us, and run the van straight at us high speed. Now what we're actually doing is we're running the van in front of the group. We've got the people about 100 yards from the farmer whose land we're on. And as the van comes, this is called van tucking. And the first person lies down, lies down, lies down, lies down. And I'm the last person, and I do 2 back somersaults. Bing, 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 and then later. And this farmer's, oh my gosh, what's a very cruel. And we had him really upset. And then we explained, we were running the van in front of us. He thought that, oh, in today's world, we would have lost access to that land, I think. But that was how I dealt with my ADHD, and now I'm turning 73, and only now is the ADHD causing me grief because I've learned how to play pickleball. And with pickleball, you have to focus on that little ball or you're just in trouble. And my brain is going, what was that noise? Who's doing that? But anyway, I'm still dealing with it.
Our mentor, Paul, said, you gotta join Meetup, you know, so we did do that. This is all volunteer, and we're not especially, we need SVEN's expertise. But anyway, we started with a meetup page, and so I would urge you guys to go to Meetup 7 Stories and sign in. It's no big deal. You just sign up and you get information. Fresh Gown Stories has a meetup page as well. And it's a good way to connect and get the latest information, and there's all sorts of other things that you can find out there. So I urge you to do that, and I want to thank you again for coming this evening, and see you next month, and I hope the good weather holds over the weekend, and thank you. See you next time.